Morning came softly over Churchill Downs. The track that had thundered with 150 years of history now lay quiet beneath a pale Kentucky sunrise. The grandstands were nearly empty. The confetti had been swept away. The roses, once bright and proud, rested gently in a silver vase inside the barn office. But inside stall 17, history was still breathing. The Derby champion stood calmly, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. He lowered his head into fresh hay, chewing peacefully. No cameras, no cheers, no flashing lights. Just the simple rhythm of life. The trainer arrived before dawn like he always had. Victory had not changed his habits. He paused outside the stall for a moment, watching. "Good morning, champion," he whispered. The horse lifted his head slightly, ears flicking forward at the familiar voice. What amazed the trainer most was how normal everything felt. After the greatest win of their lives, the world outside was exploding. Interviews, invitations, offers, headlines. But inside the barn, it was still about care, feeding, walking, healing, protecting, because champions are not made in the spotlight. They are protected in the quiet. Later that morning, school buses lined the fence outside the stable area. Children pressed their small hands against the railing, hoping to see the Derby winner. When the colt was led out for a light walk, the crowd gasped. He looked almost gentle now. Powerful, yes, but calm, graceful, his coat shining in the early light. A little boy wearing a borrowed jockey helmet stared wide-eyed. "Mom," he whispered. "That's him." And in that moment, the trainer understood something bigger than trophies. This horse had become hope, not just for the owners. Not just for the jockey, but for dreamers. That afternoon, the jockey returned to the barn alone. He stood quietly beside the horse, running his hand along his neck. "I'll never forget what you did for me," he said softly. For years, he had chased big wins, he had tasted victory before. But this one felt different. This one had been earned the hard way. Through doubt, through criticism. Through races where they finished second, or worse. Through mornings when quitting would have been easier. He remembered the night before the Derby. Sleep had barely come. He had replayed every possible scenario in his mind. Fear had whispered that maybe this was too big. But the horse had stood steady in his stall, unshaken, and somehow that calm had passed into him. Now, as the sun dipped lower, the reality of what they had accomplished settled into something deeper. The Derby trophy would eventually gather dust. The roses would fade. New champions would rise next year. But something permanent had been written. Because the story was no longer about speed, it was about resilience. A week later, back at their home training track, life returned to routine. No massive crowds. No national anthem. Just the sound of hooves on dirt at sunrise. The champion jogged lightly, stretching his muscles. He wasn't running to prove anything now. He was running because that's what he was born to do. The trainer leaned against the rail again, just like he had months earlier on that cold winter morning when doubt had crept in. But this time, there was peace. A reporter had once asked him, "When did you know he could win the Derby?" He hadn't answered then, but he knew now. It wasn't a single workout, it wasn't a timed breeze. It wasn't a perfect gallop, it was the day the horse lost badly, and still came back fighting the next morning. That was the day he knew. Because champions are not revealed in victory. They are revealed in how they respond to defeat. As summer approached, invitations poured in. The Preakness, the Belmont, international races. Bigger purses. Bigger stages, but the trainer gathered his team. "We will do what's right for the horse," he said. "Not what's loud, not what's profitable. What's right." Because this journey had never been about chasing every spotlight. It had been about earning one moment of truth. And they had earned it. One evening, months later, the trainer watched a replay of the race alone. The final stretch, the surge. The impossible becoming real. He noticed something he hadn't before. In the last few strides, when exhaustion should have broken him, the horse's ears flicked forward, as if he was reaching for something. Not fear, not pressure, but belief. The trainer smiled through quiet tears. "Thank you," he whispered to the empty room. Because this wasn't just the story of a racehorse. It was the story of every person who was told they weren't enough. Every dream dismissed as unrealistic. Every underdog counted out too soon. And the truth that followed was simple. The loudest cheers fade. The headlines disappear. But the courage it takes to keep running, that lasts forever. And somewhere, in a quiet barn under a Kentucky sky, A Derby champion slept peacefully, unaware that he had become a legend.